Hello, everyone. Welcome to Crypt, CAMPFIRE, and choose your nightmare of Scamp's adventure.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Choose Your Nightmare. Can you hear me, Alyssa? Can you hear me, Gon?
Yes, I can.
What's up, everybody? We have a special guest today. The man, the myth, the legend. Jack's going to be joining us to go over some updates with Crypt TV, some insights into Scamp's world and the greater monster universe, and then we'll kick it into gear for our third session. So, as we wait to get situated with Jack, I just want to kind of give everyone a little backdrop of where we were, and just kind of reminisce where we think this is all headed for this Choose Your Nightmare process. And the good thing with this, just for everyone listening, there's no wrong answers. The cool part about this type of development process is we get to expand upon the story, the lore, the characters, and cool, potentially even innovative type ways. And so, to just kind of encourage everyone out there that wants to participate, that wants to give feedback, that wants to give notes, hop in the Discord, share anything and everything you're interested in regards to the story process. There's no wrong answers. It's ultimately about creativity, it's about collaboration, and it's about having some fun. So, very simple. And yeah, so basically, last week we focused on, and I thought we did a really good job, by the way, Ryan and Alyssa, just as far as like getting it out there to see like, okay, that could work, is we focused on building out an A storyline, something that basically starts at the end of the short and kind of takes us all the way through to like a climactic, really nice ending. How did you all like that experience? What did you think? Like, does it seem like we have something that we can like really work from? Just curious your thoughts. Alyssa,
yeah,
or
I was
Ryan,
having a lot of fun with it, and I saw some really great responses in the Discord of ways that the Vegas adventure could go, some additional twists and turns. So yeah, I was having a lot of fun.
I was too. I agree. There's so many opportunities that our characters can like run into in Vegas that you could really take it anywhere. And there's like even stuff I'll save it for later. But like I was thinking about other stuff during this week, and I was like, oh man, we should have brought that up. We should have brought this up. So we can talk about it later though.
And it looks like the man of the hour is ready to join us. Alyssa, are you able to add Jack into the fold? Just want to get him situated first, and we'll catch up on this after we have time to talk to Jack. And basically continue kicking the can down the road of a storyline, the characters, what else we can come up with in regards to Scamp, his owners, his wranglers, his friends, his family. However we want to decipher those people. So, Jack, question for you, just kind of broad stroke, what's going on with, Crypt TV, what's coming up? Any announcements coming up or anything that you want to share?
Yeah, we have a really fun week coming up. We announced 2 weeks ago that we have our new VR movie written by Eli Roth, starring Peyton List and Anana Starkis and Alana Ubach. Peyton's kind of known for Cobra Kai, but she's a great actor, been in many things. Alana is from Euphoria, so we just got to work with a great cast and crew. This VR movie is fucking awesome. And I'd love to maybe figure out how we can do a contest in the Discord where maybe we can give away a MetaQuest headset. Those headsets can be expensive. We want to give people access to this beautiful movie we made. There is a 2D version of the movie that we'll post that I'm really pumped about, but it looks, it's meant for VR, so it looks great in VR. And this is like an original idea from Eli. He wrote it, and he's bringing his horror movie chops to VR for a second time. It was directed by this great director, Adam McDonald, who I loved working with. But it's a very fun Valentine's Day horror movie scene. So I really love this movie. And, that's what I love about Crypt and what we try to do every day, which is we're talking about a Valentine's Day VR movie with Peyton List, written by Eli Roth, and starring some other great talent. And then we're talking about Scamp in Vegas. So we have such a wide variety of stuff we're working on. So I'm really excited for this week.
To kind of take it back into Crypt's monster universe, so to speak, you told me something that really hit to a core of where I think, just storytelling from a creative kind of synergy really grounds itself. And it was based around this idea of monsters with heart. And so that really struck a chord with me as far as how do we tell a story, Scamp's extension story, this kind of choose your nightmare, and kind of bringing it back to that thematic through line. I'm curious just your thoughts with like Crypt's ecosystem, monster stories, and that kind of monsters with heart. What does that mean to you, and how do you see that playing out in general with more Crypt IP?
You know, I'm really, first off, thank you everyone who's listening in live. I'm excited for all the people who will see it later. And we just really want to provide interesting, creative insights. You know, Crypt and myself did a lot of TV shows and movies, and it's hard. So everything I say is the ideals that we want to have, and when you're making stuff, it can kind of be difficult. But you know, the thing with Monsters with Heart is a one-note antagonist is not interesting, right? A one-note antagonist, anyone who you just see as pure evil and you can't see their motivations, it's hard. And it also doesn't give a lot of agency to the characters getting killed in horror movies. So if you have a one-note monster with no rules and the monster's just there to just kind of indiscriminately kill, it's just not going to be that scary, right? When you look at something iconic, and there's so many iconic horror monsters, you know, what makes Michael Myers, in my opinion, is in that original movie, the way they do the reveal at the end, right? That's what makes the whole origin story so scary, where you understand where he came from and what might have been his perspective and what set down this path. For Crypt, I really think that this ethos of Monsters with Heart started with the Birch. When we made that first Birch short, which really kind of kicked off our whole vision of Marvel for monsters and building the monsters that led to Scamp, you know, Birch is a protector. Birch, killing is wrong, but Birch is protecting the innocent, and she's called on, and there was rules and a mythology and a means in which she was called on. So what I want to be there for Scamp, and what I want this community to build together, which is, I think, so important to any monster, is what is the monster's point of view? The monster can't just indiscriminately kill. It has to have protagonist elements to it, as well as antagonist elements. It's got to be a complicated, multi-layered character. You know, I look at a Crypt monster like Looksee, which is the Looksee in its own weird, twisted way is trying to help you. It's trying to help you let go of your grief. If you cannot let go, maybe you should let go. The monster has a perspective. So I think the way you give monsters heart is you have to have protagonist elements to them. You have to have people be able to see themselves in the monster. And you kind of need people leaving the movie theater or finishing the YouTube short or finishing the TV show or however they're watching it. And you need some people to be like, well, in a weird way, I kind of get that monster's perspective, you know?
Yeah, that's really great. And Ryan and Alyssa, if you have anything to add on or jump in, feel free to. That kind of struck a chord what you just said, too, about seeing ourselves in the monster, which I think is a lot of where storytelling obviously comes from, is, you know, we're putting ourselves in the characters, so to speak, or pieces of ourselves. And interestingly, I was playing around with some AI art for some conceptualizing different types of things around storytelling and just kind of storyboarding. And I accidentally created a Scamp humanoid.
Oh!
And I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. Like, it looks cool. I'll show it to everybody this week. But basically, it was so interesting because I was like, oh, this is like what Scamp might look like as a human. And so it was just like a cool, interesting way of kind of seeing Scamp potentially, or any monster, from a different level of like, you know, if they were really human, what would they like kind of feel like, look like, you know, what would we associate them as? And so that was just an interesting kind of, I recommend anybody that plays around with any kind of AI, anything, if you're not an artist already, to just kind of, you know, play around and get some ideas and encourage that kind of creative feeling of, ooh, what would happen if you tried this or that? So it's just something that caught my eye in regards to what you're saying, Jack.
No, I love that. I completely agree. And it's even funny, like, I think there's probably benefits from forcing yourself to look at a monster as a human. When we think about the ways that AI, it's like almost like when you have to visualize the monster as a human, you as a storyteller might be more likely to endow it with human qualities and arcs and foibles, and whatever makes your creative process easier is a good thing. But the truth is, you should be looking at monsters like that from the jump. You always have to think, you know, the character can be, you know, a monster by definition is supernatural, right? Like, you know, we don't deal with monsters in our plane of existence every day. But you have to be looking at the monsters, even if it doesn't speak English, even if it doesn't communicate the way you and me are communicating. It has strengths and weaknesses and an emotional perspective. And it has to have emotional perspective because you always need to leave open the possibility that a monster has an emotional arc. You know, we get so used to oh, the humans have emotional arcs in horror TV shows or horror movies. And the monster doesn't necessarily have to have an arc, but if it doesn't have a possibility for an arc, there'll be no suspense. Tension only comes from an idea of doubt of where this thing's going to go, whether it can be defeated, whether it could change his mind. So all that's so important.
Giving them sort of like a lush story and not just having your antagonist like a one-note character. A perfect example of that is like Birch season 1, right? Where it's like you've got two stories going on and you've got Midori becoming the, well, you know, whatever. But like her storyline is so interesting, and then it ends with like that last episode. You're like, oh my god! And even if it's not tension, it's all still like you get a lot of like oh shit moments where you're just like, yes, this is amazing. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Yeah. There's some really cool moments you can do if you really do flesh out your characters.
I'm grateful for the compliment, first of all. Secondly, you know, I don't want to ever like try to criticize the most successful movies ever, because I just know how hard it is. And, you know, for me with Avatar 2, which I really liked, you know, there's varying opinions, but a huge flaw of Avatar 2 for me is that villain was so one note, right? There's never a moment where I can see myself in the villain's perspective or the villain's ideals. And I just think that, like, you want a villain can still be a villain. No one's saying it has to be just 50-50. But if you can't see yourself in the monster, where you don't have any percentage of the audience being like, actually, I think the monster's right here, it's just going to make the story less dynamic. So that's what we tried to do in Birch season 1. And I think it's so important because, again, in horror, I think there's two things where people go wrong, which I would always advise folks on. One is the characters have to have agency, even if they're going to get killed, right? Because if a character have no chance to save themselves, then they're just not going to be interesting. If they have no agency to try to change their situation, it's not really scary. You just know that they're, you know, slaughtered, right? And if the monster doesn't have a chance to have its own arc, or the monster doesn't have a chance to kind of be emotionally complicated, it's just not gonna. You're not gonna have the same tension.
I love that. That's a great reminder. You know, especially with horror. You know, I think obviously what we're all interested in kind of experiencing as an audience is that anticipation, is that tension, is that being hooked along as long as possible before you know even more so than just a jump scare, but actually, you know, from a connected emotional level too, on an even deeper level. So that's really great, Jack. I just wanted to kind of pivot into this too, is since, you know, you've been around, like, you know where Scamp came from, you know the dirty details. Where is there any kind of like, I don't know, people call it alpha. Is there any kind of backstories or any in the origins process of creating Scamp? Any dirt that we can get about anything that, hey, we originally thought Scamp was going to be like this or do that, or anything in that nature, or even something you wish we would have explored?
Well, I think there's a dual answer to that. It's a great question. I think one is, especially when we were making these YouTube, I mean, this is the Crypt monster universe. That's a key phrase, right? It's a monster universe, right? And especially when we were making stuff just on YouTube, where, you know, we really had all the control and it was, you know, Crypt financing everything. All these monsters exist in the same universe. So I think the dirt, so to speak, can be based on the setting, based on when Scamp was released on our YouTube channel, and kind of look what was maybe released before, maybe what was released after. Where in the Crypt monster universe does Scamp exist? What's the most likely other character that Scamp would be interacting with, right? I think that's a key way to think about it, which is just, where is Scamp? We have this kind of trailer park energy. What else is near trailer parks? Is it near a campsite? What's the setting, right? Thinking about campsites, thinking about some of our kind of more famed monsters that are around the woods and the backwoods in that setting, and all the possibilities that opens up, right? I think that's why Scamp in Vegas is a really fun idea. You know, when I think about a movie that took a monster from the jungle to the city, Predator 1 to Predator 2, they went from the jungle to the city. But why is Scamp starting there, right? Why is Scamp starting there is a really interesting idea. And I think an idea that was hugely part of when we're making the origin story, because all these monsters exist together.
Interesting. And so I got to keep digging. What monster do you recommend or would like to see, or I don't know, is there a relationship, potentially a budding relationship that could be explored with Scamp, or I'm just curious your thoughts on what that is. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I would say again, just look at the videos around that time. Is there? I don't want to like just spell it out exactly, but like, are there summer camps? Right? Like, what type of summer camps could Scamp have escaped from? You know, I do think that Crypt monsters all exist in the same universe, even if their tone is different. The tone of Scamp is different than the tone of Birds, than the tone of Mordeo, than the tone of Sunny Family. But think about kind of maybe similar tone, and if Scamp came from a summer camp, where would he be coming from? Why would he have left? You know what I mean? You know, the whole thing of when we meet Scamp has to be, why are we meeting him now? Why has he gotten here? And where is he going? So I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly, but that's how I would be thinking about it in terms of where he's from in the Crypt Monster universe.
You have been summoned, Monster Wranglers. If Alyssa doesn't give us the answer because she's, a genius when it comes to all things Crypt TV, feel free to share your insights, what you think it is, what it could be, what you'd like to see, as far as who is Scamp most closely connected to? Who do we want to see Scamp fraternize with, potentially? I don't know. And that's something I think we'll keep exploring through this series as this Choose Your Nightmare kind of unfolds. And I think I think one more question, and then if Ryan or Alyssa have any more, feel free.
For all the people who are watching on YouTube or seeing me look around, it's because this little puppy dog here is a monster and it's eating everything in the background like he's his own Scamp while I'm doing this. But hit me with your next question.
Okay, so a la this kind of Choose Your Nightmare experience that we are looking to obviously put the audience, the fans, in more control of how some things unfold. In that kind of Bandersnatch way, if you remember, I don't know if when's the last time you've seen it, but there are times when they really break genre, right? So when you're going down the rabbit hole of I chose left, and then I choose another choice, it takes us to a place where now there's this big, like, Jet Li action sequence, and you're like, wait, what? And so then it's like, oh, that was all a dream. And so you get kind of stuck in mazes of, if you go that direction, you get stuck, and it brings you back to kind of the origin point. In that kind of vein, do you think any kind of pushing Scamp into alt boundaries from almost like a subgenre perspective that would interest you, or what you think could be interesting to delve into? Whether it's like, how campy can we take Scamp, or how bloody, gory, crazy can we go? Like, I'm just curious if you had any kind of, or even like, maybe there's a romance section. Like, we could really potentially, with this Choose Your Nightmare, go a lot of directions.
Well, I love that point. By the way, I actually rewatched not all of it. You can sit there for 4 hours. But I rewatched parts of Bandersnatch once we consummated our partnership for one to be thinking that way. And I think that's a really good point. You know, what Bandersnatch did was it used the Choose Your Own Adventure to have multiple movies almost within one movie, tone-wise, right? There's Bandersnatch stuff that's like very deep drama. There's Bandersnatch stuff that, turns super gory and horror. So I would love to do that with Scamp. I think the key is, how do you set up the turns so that you can have a tonal turn or an emotional turn, but it's actually led into with a character arc, right? Like, you can go from camp to slasher, you can go from camp to romance, you can go from gore to emotional drama, as long as the actual thing that are happening to the characters set up why the tone shifts. So that's the fun thing about this format, is you can tone shift much more than when you're on a linear story. But just because you can tone shift because of the sort of choose your own adventure of it all, don't take for granted the fact that you can set up that tone shift in the way the story's progressing.
I love that. And it reminds me too of, and obviously dream sequences are typically the easiest to do a similar type structure, like tone shift, is in Superbad, memory serves, I think Jonah Hill's character is in the grocery store and he's imagining himself getting caught, underage buying booze or something, and it's this big horror sequence of heads getting sliced off by cops or whatever. And so that was just like a good example of, like, it made sense within the context of the protagonist's experience you're watching, which was Jonah Hill, but obviously he was kind of daydreaming, get back to reality, but that you got to kind of experience it.
Because here's the key word you said there that I would advise for all types of storytelling. It's very relevant to the Choose Your Own Adventure we're talking to, but it's a great storytelling tip. it made sense within what the protagonist's anxiety was, right? So even though that's a huge that scene was a very big tonal shift within the movie, it was kind of previewed and set up for what this character is already going through, right? All the more reason it's important to give the monster's perspective, like we talked about a little earlier, right? As long as it's hinted at and you're setting up the foundation for why the character's going through this, it makes it really land when you try to take those tonal shift experiences.
Any final thoughts, Ryan or Alyssa? And Jack, if you have anything else you'd like to say, happy, super stoked to have you on this, on this show, and getting your input and expertise has been really, really valuable, I think.
Yeah, I actually have a question. Is there anything that's too far with Scamp, do you think? Is there anything where you would be like, no, we absolutely cannot take him there?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ryan. It's the same answer. And, I love your guys' knowledge. You guys have great knowledge and great lessons to pass on. And the only thing that's too far is if in the character, be it Scamp or be it a human character, if it makes no sense, right? Like, it would make no sense for Jonah Hill in Superbad in that movie to be having, a vision of him at the dentist's office at age 55, right? That wouldn't make sense. So there's never, and that's the fun thing about storytelling. People get too focused, I think, on, would this make sense in terms of the setting versus would the character have the anxiety about this? So if you want to play in crazy realms, it's really how is the character's emotion going to lead you into that realm versus, is setting Scamp in Vegas or North Carolina or Australia? Like, it's all about what's the actual situation emotionally the characters are in, and then you can have tons of fun with the other shit.
Any kind of final thoughts from Ryan or Alyssa as Jack parts ways with us? Anything that you took away? I thought that was really, really insightful. Just a lot of, especially the emotion of your characters grounding the truth to then open up the Pandora's box of which way can they go, and then how far can we push that kind of alt situation or alt narrative. I thought that was really insightful.
Yeah, that's kind of the essence of Crypt and why the characters work so well and why, the stories work so well, is you follow these genuine emotions down to their monstrous conclusions.
As long as it comes from the character, like the character's drive. And so it's like, all right, let's do it. Let's go way out there.
Well, and
Great.
I think the cool thing too is in the alt kind of void narrative, right? The alt scenario, whatever that is, there's a world where we can drive that emotion to the place we want it to go too, right? So we can always kind of start pushing an emotion of the character in a direction to get to a point, to get to the point we need them to get to, whatever. So that's interesting. Okay. Well, cool. So yeah, back to our storyline. We started building out, for anyone listening, in our Miro board, a kind of deck around this story to give a visual. It's password protected. We'll drop it this week in the Discord that you can check out. Basically, it's a way for us to kind of publicly, with anyone that wants access to it, track the storylines. And we'll keep some things behind closed doors because we want there to be some, obviously reveals and excitement. But in general, we also want to broadcast the process and demonstrate what's possible, and obviously include everyone in the fold as much as they'd like to be for any kind of ideas or thoughts or what have you. And so I believe in the Miro board you can also add notes and comments, so you can be like, hey, drop a comment here, I like this, or like, ooh, have you guys thought of that? Like whatever you're feeling, or in the Discord's fine too. But basically, building out this Miro board, we have the kind of the A storyline we got into last week, which is basically the idea that, hey, the short film ended, the story ended, and we're picking up at the end, the tail end of that, right? And so I think, for now anyways, this can always change and evolve. We ended, they got the cash, Scamp bit off the head of, or electrocuted the head off the sheriff, cops are probably on their way or something, and they're off and running to greener pastures. And I think we came up with so far, right, Ryan, and Alyssa, which is they're going to go to Vegas because they got like some money, and they want more money. They just, which seems kind of in line with where we're headed with the characters that Scamp's met, is just this kind of like, they're going to kind of choose the pathway of, not campy, but just kind of like, that kind of like, of course they would do that. Like, of course they would go to Vegas after they get a little bit of money. So I'm going to pull this up to kind of remind myself. of where we're at in that process. Let's see, give me 1 second. That's better. Okay. So, to kind of backtrack, just so we can kind of remember where we were at, what we were at, kind of what we were going to do is, and this is an example of where I think we could make like a choice to give the audience, you know, a key decision like right away. So let's say we start back in the car and they're on the run. Oh, we did it. Thank you, Scamp. You're the best. Like, you're our new son. And then, like, they get surrounded by a SWAT team. And the choice could be some version of, right? And this can always change. Scamp eats the entire SWAT team, goes on a rampage, saves the day. Or Scamp tries to eat all the, you know, cops before it's too late, but the couple dies. And so whatever that choice is, whether it's like, does Scamp succeed or does he not, right? Like whatever that is. And we can play out, and I'm not going to say which choice would lead to what option. I think it's pretty obvious. But then you could pivot into, okay, well, what happens if they died right away? This was Scamp's family, right? Could we explore a kind of sad Scamp now if we go from the emotional state, which is Scamp just lost everything, his people that he got, you know, we went through this whole experience with, and now, boom, right at the top, they're gone. And so going that direction, maybe there's something we can come up with. And it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be a super long narrative, because it could be a trap door that then, like a maze, brings us back to, let's say, the car ride. And then maybe it was all a dream, right? Like from just a very simple way to frame this one in particular at the start. And so if that was the case, and I want to pose this to Alyssa and Ryan for now, and anyone can feel free to comment in the Discord, so Scamp is not successful. His people die. Now he's on his own. What kind of Scamp are we getting emotionally? And maybe that'll determine how far of the subgenre we want to explore. What do you all think?
I think one emotion we haven't explored too much is anger, and I think that Scamp could be a good representation of anger and rage, because he, like, when something bad happens, he goes he flies off the handle. He goes straight to murder. Murder's his first option when anything comes in his path. It's like, that's maybe not everyone would make that same choice, but
I like that idea. What if, and that's super interesting, because like Jack said, right, is that kind of like emotional depth of pain gives us justification for Scamp to ramp up his production of biting heads off, right? Mm-hmm. And so what if on the cusp of them arriving to Vegas, let's say, you know, and they're enjoying their ride, like, oh, this is amazing, we're gonna make it, we're gonna, you know, everything's so cool, and they're surrounded, like on the edge of Vegas. They're like on the Vegas Strip, and they don't his family, his people, they don't make it out alive. So now Scamp is ready for some degenerate blood. He wants to just go to the nearest casino and just start going, what's going on here? He just starts biting heads off, indiscriminatory. And then maybe that plays out, or maybe we keep going with it. I don't know. But like, to Alyssa's point, what do you think, Ryan? Like, I like that idea of this alt scenario where we explore like Rampage Scamp, where he's so distraught and hurt. Revenge is his only taste. Is, you know, he's looking for blood.
Well, okay, so
what do you think?
So here's my thought. My thought process would be, if he loses his people, he's gonna get angry for sure, but there's also gonna be this moment where he's like completely destroyed for a second, right? Because you're going to get sad, you're going to get emotionally torn up, and then you're gonna get mad, right? Because they took everything away from you. Everything you just sort of like formed a bond with is now gone. So for me, if let's say they were at the edge of town, let's say there was a big standoff, I would think that Scamp would have to go somewhere. If I'm thinking visually, I would think, okay, so he's at the bottom of, you know, the emotions of where he can be right now. He's like beat up, he's depressed, he's just not in a good spot. So I would, thinking of Vegas, in Vegas you have like the sewers, right? Like there's apparently like a whole like town underneath Vegas in the sewers. There's like tons of people living in the sewers. I would get Scamp down there, and I would get Scamp to like, I don't know, either start a following.
Team
Yes,
team up with the sewer
people, and then lead a revolt against Vegas or something like that. Something just insane. But you know what I mean? Like he's at the bottom. Like where is he gonna go from here? He's like running around the tunnels underneath Vegas. He comes across some really nice person down there. They help him kind of bounce back, and he takes revenge and like takes his anger out on the people who are on the surface.
And then they destroy the whole city and capitalism itself.
Yeah, exactly.
I like this idea that every off ramp is actually just like one big controversial statement. Like, not that that's controversial, but just like just for fun, be like, oh, well then, and like Scamp becomes a commie over here. He does something crazy over there. And it's just like big political stunts for fun, just to rile feathers for no reason. So yeah, I think that's great. What if, you know, obviously just kind of playing this out, is what if there's a combination of a little bit of both? What if it's like this, we think he's going to do the rampage or whatever, and then it's, you know, one sewer person, I don't know, is that what we call them? Person living in the sewer is like, hey, buddy.
As a person experiencing sewerness.
A person experiencing sewerness, I like, is, you know, offer Scamp like a cookie, like something that even like we even think as the audience, they go, that's, Scamp's gonna definitely rip that guy's head off because he's clueless, but it's so genuine to Scamp that he's like, oh, I like you. And it's just like, he's right back into being a little more like, okay, I can be a different type of Scamp, back to my true self, which is where I was originally headed before my family got offed. Yeah, so I don't know. That's definitely interesting. I think we could definitely explore potentially even both options in that regard. The question, the tricky part, I think, is going to be, and as we get there, is how far do we take it, right? Is, like I said, there's a million ways to tell stories and go different directions and all this, especially if you're changing tones and subgenres as a part of it. So the question becomes, as we do this, how far do we push certain narratives, certain stories? Because, you know, we could have a 3-hour experience extravaganza, which might be too insane for us to, you know, complete in a timely manner. But yeah, I'm just curious, like, do you see this as an alt narrative that we explore? Do we cut it off, or do we just kind of let it see where it takes us? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I think we should think about what's like the ultimate message or the ultimate story that we're trying to tell with Scamp, and where does he fit into the universe? Like, what point do we need to make with Scamp so that he is different from everything else in the universe, and so that he makes a splash and gets people attached to him and interested in his story? So we don't want to take it so far that there's no more stories, but we want to, keep people in there enough that he's got a whole lifetime of adventures.
Well, I like that, and I think the benefit with this kind of choose your nightmare opportunity is different pathways can maybe teach us different lessons. Like different, you know, if Scamp goes on the revenge tour, but then realizes, you know, revenge is best served cold, but no, it's not. It's just have someone to hold you at night and you'll feel better. Like, whatever it is, maybe that's something we explore. So curious, Alyssa, what do you think then? What is the end message that we think Scamp, so not even us, it's more so like Scamp, from what we've seen, what we feel like we know about him, wants to like kind of send the world, right? Like, obviously we know from the story, but is there anything we can pull, you know, even more so from what we think or what we've seen?
Yeah, I'm curious if we follow the rage path or if we follow the chosen family path, because we have some notes of all of those things in other Crypt shorts, and like your family dying and having to be replaced with another thing. So yeah, I'm not totally set on one yet.
Okay. Well, and again, we can explore those alt scenarios that don't become the full kind of like A storyline. Those can kind of like be B storyline, C storyline, D, E, F, G, right? So we can always say, this is a crazy thing that he's going to explore, but we know it's going to end in 2 beats or something, and we'll come back to kind of like the main storyline. And so let's maybe go back to that then, because that'll probably help us navigate the like core A storyline, which is just basically a term for like the primary story. For where do we see the message kind of landing for Scamp in the end? And so to kind of play it out from what we came up with last week, though this can change, kind of like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 structure, we have basically, they get in the car, they make their way to Vegas, they're going to try to make more money with the money they just got from all the rent taken, and they run into like an old lady, things get crazy, maybe some heads roll, and Mr. Scamp's daddy is like, ooh, I need more money. Or they lost all their money at the casino, and they're like, well, crap, now we lost everything. How do we get it back? Let's use Scamp. Let's sell him to a circus. I got a cousin in San Antonio. And then there's some maybe conflict around that, and they're basically, the Scamp's dad is going to potentially like sell him off to his cousin or put him in a circus, something of that nature. And basically it comes to that moral kind of decision of, wait, like this dude helped save your life like 10 times, got you all this money that then you blew, and now you're just gonna like sell him down the river for a quick buck? Like, what?
For me, it like if we go with like the you know, you're choosing your own family type of thing, like I love my family to death, but you know, family does stab each other in the back every now and then, and you have to learn to like live with that, and you have to learn to like deal with that, and you know, get over things like that. And usually it's like family are the only people you're going to do that with, right? Like everyone else you're pretty much going to toss aside and get rid of and move on. And so I think it is a question of like, does Scamp, you know, process that and work through his anger with that sort of situation, which again works well with what Alyssa was saying about like dealing with his anger, and how does he work with that and take that down sort of like a more personal development path for him, or does he bite the guy's head off and then we just move on? But I think you're kind of tossing away something very valuable there if he does kill the guy. I think that, you know, if he doesn't kill the guy, there's more of a lesson there to be learned for everyone watching, right? Yeah.
And I agree. And again, this is the beautiful thing about this, is we can play both scenarios out. And so let's say, to your point, there's an option to bite his head off. And we know that's like, but there's no redeeming quality. But let's say he does. And then there could be then more choices where we discover this guy was actually worse than anybody in the original short. And Scamp just was like peeling back an onion of betrayal, that he was going to be doing this, and like he's actually the reason the baby died, and like all kinds of crazy layers that were like, oh shit, Scamp was actually like, he was right, even though from Scamp's perspective it was kind of like I probably shouldn't have done that. I don't know. So I'm just trying to see from ways of, I agree with you though. Like the main storyline, yeah, we want to keep that true ethos of what we think Scamp represents, you know, true and grounded to his experience. But those alt narratives is where we can like really mess things up a little bit and still make them grounded from a, you know, oh, that sounds a little far-fetched, but maybe it would work out. I don't know. And kind of let the audience choose, hey, if I went this direction, okay, actually, I see where that's coming. Okay, I feel that. Then we bring them back to our reality, that main storyline, and kind of ground them back to the main message, so to speak. But yeah, no, I agree with you that for the main storyline, yeah, we don't want to, you know, Scamp just bites everyone's head off and then we're off and running. Like, I think we want to find something that, you know, finishes him being, he's learned a lesson, or something that's a little more, makes him have a monster with more heart than maybe he's shown so far. And I know one thing we played, this just kind of hit me, what do you guys think, is what if Scamp, we've played with the idea that Scamp is young, right? Like he's got a mama or something. What if he's not? What if he's like an old Scamp? Not old, but like he's, you know, he's a middle-aged.
But it's like a baby Yoda situation where he's like,
yeah, exactly. So what if Scamp meets the Scamp love of his life in the process, that warms his heart and reminds him to not be so reactionary with the betrayal or the potential betrayal of his family. Something like that. We could bring in a new character that, and maybe it's not a Scamp. Maybe it's a different type of monster he's into. I don't know. Spread the love really far. That's a good question, Alyssa. You would know this. If Scamp was in love with someone from Crypt's universe, from a monster perspective, who would it be?
Well, I was about to say, what if Scamp falls in love with like a cat, just like a normal cat?
That actually would be grounded in the short, because when he scares the cat, the dog scares the No, Scamp scares the cat. But what if he was just protecting the cat from the dog? Because we all know dogs hate cats. So he's actually protecting the cat, but the cat reacted negatively, so he didn't get the love he wanted. So he found these people that he's like, all right, you'll do for now.
But then he finds like a big fluffy Maine Coon. And he's like,
that's my girl. I really like this idea that he legitimately is like looking for love, and we don't know what type of love, and then we discover it's a fucking cat. Like he's like looking.
It's just a normal cat.
And it's just a cat. It's just a street cat. If it's too prissy, he's like, nah, I don't like that. He's like, I want something with a little grit, little. And they could even we could even have a conversation. Like the dude discovers this maybe in Vegas. You know, he takes him aside. You know, he's like, Scamp, are you looking for something else besides like you just showed up? Like, do you want something? And Scamp's like, meh. He's like, what? What is that? He's like, and he like draws a note or something, and it shows a picture of like his heart like breaking or something, and like looking for love. And then, you know, we come to find out, and it's he's looking for a cat.
It's on the street. He's walking down the street. Cat's walking down the street. They lock eyes. Marvin Gaye plays in the background, and it's like beautiful.
That's hilarious. Cat love. Now, just to play devil's advocate, is there other things Scamp could love besides the cat? I think the cat's hilarious. Is there something? Yeah.
Okay, Hank 92 is saying Scamp thinks he's falling for a furry, and then part of the costume falls off. There's a person in a furry suit. He's like, oh, you're like me. You're a furry monster like me. And then they pop their head off. And he's like, no!
It's really good, Alyssa, because it just spurred another spinoff of that. What if the furry that he's attached to at the leg, however that's going to happen, is a Scamp? Like, what if Scamp, like, we don't know this, like, the people don't know this, but when we go to Vegas, the Scamp monster is already famous. Like, and maybe this is an alt storyline, but he sees himself as this 8-foot Scamp, and he's like, I'm into that, right?
Like, oh, that's my mom.
Yeah, or his mom, yeah. Maybe that's where we get the mom inference kind of organically is. And what if there's like Scamp plush toys everywhere, and it's like this kind of meta narrative that the Scamp monster is already on national TV, and within 2 days of them getting to Vegas, it's like mainstream, and everybody's talking about the monster that ripped off the head of the sheriff who had a big dark secret background of espionage or something. So he's like the hero, and so, but we don't know this till we get into Vegas. It's just splashed everywhere on the news or something. I don't know. So it's almost like this narrative would be like a spinoff, like Scamp makes it big. You know, like that type of, if we play that scenario, that kind of tone out, that could give it some validity, potentially. Hugging a Scamp furry, maybe. It's kind of interesting. Now I want to get a big Scamp costume for Halloween. How do we make it happen? Who wants to make it? Somebody make it. I'll be Scamp for Halloween if someone makes me a costume. How about that? I think I want to go to our ultimate nightmare choice, is what I'm calling it right now, which is for Alyssa and Ryan. Anyone in the audience, feel free to give your feedback, what you think a good answer to this question could be. We try to do this every week. And right now, I don't want to be the only one coming up with them, so if anyone has any ideas, drop them in the Discord, hit us up, let us know. I try to come up with these questions as a way to say, I don't know the answer, so I purposely make it hard enough for me to go, that sounds terrible, I don't know the answer. So I'm going to ask the question. So, we're all going to die someday, that's obvious. How we meet that end, I think, is more so what terrifies a lot of us. So, to kind of amp up the horror, the terror of that kind of idea, my question is, which one of these meeting your demise would you choose? There's 3 options, and they're all terrible, okay? You're not going to want to choose any of these, and I know that. I couldn't choose. But you have to choose, okay? These are really bad, by the way. And I'm not blowing it up. Like, they're disgusting. Okay, here it goes. Number 1, feet first, sucked into a wood chipper. Number 2, eaten alive by lions or some other friendly furry creature. Number 3 is microwaved in a giant microwave, cooked inside out. So my question is, of those 3 options, if you had to be like, there's only one way you can go, and you have to choose one of them, which one sounds the most appealing?
Okay. If I have to pick, I'm gonna go. My gut instinct is, at least if lions eat me, I'm like food for another creature, and like that's the circle of life.
Simba.
And like wood chipper, that doesn't do anything. Microwave also doesn't do. But like at least I'm feeding some animal. Like they gotta eat. They gotta eat something. If I have to die,
But man,
I might as
but
well.
you're not scared, like the terror of like them eating you alive though. I don't know. Sounds pretty scary.
But if I have to choose microwave or wood chipper, it's like those don't even have a brain. It's like you can't even reason with that.
I was trying to think of like the fastest way to go. Would it be lions or microwave? But I don't know. I'm like.
But then
microwave
again,
probably
hold
goes
on.
pretty quick.
All right. So what are you thinking, Ryan? What you got to choose?
Well, I didn't think. I mean, look, Alyssa's note on like being food for something else is actually like that's very.
But is that going to
that's
get
just
you
that
through
you-
the experience, though? I mean, because we know. I mean, you're getting eaten alive.
No. I have to. It has to happen fast. It has to. So I definitely can't do the wood chipper. The wood chipper would just be too much for me. Maybe the lions. I'm hoping that like I get one just big lion swipe across the face and I'm out, and they just.
You don't think the wood chipper would be faster than the microwave? I think a microwave you got 10 minutes minimum.
Has anyone ever cooked?
Your whole body?
I mean, I guess it depends how intense it is,
I
but
feel like
you
your
probably
brain
cook
would
pretty
get scrambled
fast.
pretty quick, right?
I think a wood chipper, you're through that in like 20 seconds.
Now I gotta know, like, how long? Because I assume, here's what I assume. I assume I'm inside a microwave. I assume the microwave is going to boil my brain, like,
yeah, it's gonna cook
that,
you
pretty
inside
quickly.
out. Yeah.
But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know. Has anyone
anyone ever been microwaved
tried
alive?
for science?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, now that we've kind of talked about it a little bit, I guess, yeah, I think I would choose microwaved because, like you said, wood chipper, I mean, that sounds really, really terrible, especially feet first.
It's brutal.
But though I think you'd go into shock pretty fast just from the intensity, and then, like, it's over. Lions, no, that sound, like, torn apart, you don't know what they're biting when, like, your pain receptors might still be going off. I don't know. No, I'm all good. I think microwave because, not that we know how this feels, but there's a level of, like, if you ever had a really intense sickness, illness, or, like, fever, and, like, your body's, like, overheated, your back hurts, your kidneys hurt, and, like, and obviously it would be probably way more intense than that. But I feel like we kind of know what that feeling is to an extent, so we know how to kind of maybe deal with it as it's happening. So it's less maybe severe, potentially. I don't know. But that's a question for the audience, too, if anybody wants to pop in the Discord or in the YouTube comments, wherever, and just kind of share your... How would you choose? It all sounds horribly disgusting and awful, so hopefully no one ever has to experience any of it.
The lions are welcome to eat me after I'm popped in the microwave.
Yeah. After the wood chipper, feed me the lions.
Yeah, after you pop.
Which technically, I mean, you know, the wood chipper spits you out in little tiny pieces all over the ground, so I'm sure that you're feeding something there too, maybe. Your fertilizer for the trees.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Feed the trees or feed the lions? Who you going for? Huh. Tough choices.
We've done both of those species pretty dirty. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, well, I'm tasking you all who are listening. Come up with our next question for next week. Drop in the Discord if you're in the Discord right now listening. I want to see some good questions. Let's see what we can come up with. And again, I'm sure you can pull stuff up offline if you want, wherever, but just something that's really very difficult to answer is the goal. And it has like a moral almost dilemma or like an ethical one or pain tolerance or something. So yeah, I think that's it from us this week. Any final thoughts, Ryan, Alyssa, any final takeaways before we kick it out and see you next week?
If Scamp's looking for a girlfriend, Scully is available.
We gotta get some pictures of Scully in there. Get some pictures of Scully in the Discord.
Yeah.
Just,
She's
yeah.
a little
Aw.
She's a little snot. She's just gonna sneeze on him. Thank you everyone for joining us for another Crypt Campfire in a Choose Your Nightmare, and we'll be back same time next week on Discord. Catch you then.